This terrible secret shocked the community. A beggar who has to survive day in and day out on the goodness of other people turns out to have a lot to hide. By chance, a local resident discovers the dark circumstances in which the woman lives. It was an ordinary afternoon in San Diego, California. Michelle was loading her groceries. The parking lot of her local supermarket was full of cars, limiting visibility. Michelle didn't like this at all and started packing her trunk more and more frantically. As Michelle turned around and got ready to use her standard blow-off phrase, she saw something that shut her up. Much to her surprise, the beggar had a baby in her arms. With wide eyes, both mother and child looked at Michelle, who this time could not escape a good deed. Completely stunned, Michelle pulled out her wallet and gave the beggar a $10 bill. She thanked Michelle with an unintelligible grunt and an uncertain smile. After this encounter, Michelle decided she had been too biased. From then on out, she would always give the beggar some small change. She must have been having a really hard time on the street with a baby. Michelle had a lot of compassion for the beggar. That is why she was very shocked by what she saw the following week. A week after discovering that the beggar had a small child, Michelle came face to face with the poor woman again. Again, Michelle pulled out her wallet, and again the woman thanked her with a small smile. Michelle noticed now that the beggar wasn't looking at her and didn't know how quickly she had to get away. Michelle threw it in shame and waved it further away, but what she saw then set alarm bells off for her. There were rumors that the beggar wasn't really as bad as she made it out to be. Child Protective Services would never let this happen, would they? And the beggar was very good at what she did. She always managed to get money or food from a few people. The baby actually suited her very well. That way she could arouse a lot of pity. Michelle was disgusted by the cynical looks from her neighbors. No one knew the woman's real story. If they had known this, they probably wouldn't have been so biased. Michelle watched the beggar as she walked away from the grocery store. Hopefully, she now had enough money to arrange a decent place to sleep for her and her baby. Out of nowhere, a black car drove up to the homeless woman. The car stopped with the passenger side right next to the homeless woman, who was clearly very startled. The car door was slammed open and the beggar girl glanced at Michelle. What was she to do with the beggar? And why was she so shocked? Michelle grabbed her phone and kept a close eye on the incident unfolding before her eyes. To Michelle's shock, the beggar got into the black Mercedes. Before Michelle caught a glimpse of the driver, the car left the parking lot with screeching tires. Without thinking, Michelle tossed her groceries in the trunk, ran around the car, jumped behind the wheel, and started the pursuit. What she would discover would shake the entire community. She decides to record her pursuit with her phone's camera. Michelle watches as the beggar woman sits on the passenger seat, smiling broadly. Next to her is a man who laughs cheerfully with her. In his hands, he has dollar bills, which he counts carefully. Then the light turns green and the Mercedes races off again. They haven't seen Michelle, who now continues the pursuit in anger. The pursuit comes to an end at another shopping center. They park the car out of sight and the beggar gets out. She takes the baby in her arms again and the smile disappears. She walks the last bit and then speaks to someone almost immediately. Whoops! The first money appears again, and just as quickly as it appeared, the note disappears back into the woman's pocket. Michelle watches in amazement. She has no idea what awaits her. Michelle is fuming. As the adrenaline surges through her body, she records the entire event on her phone. She takes pictures of the woman and her baby, but also of the black car and the people whose money she is taking, until the beggar's eye falls on Michelle and suddenly furiously rushes at her. The homeless woman picks up a rock from the ground and throws it at Michelle. The man gets out of the car and walks over to Michelle while screaming. Fortunately, a bystander calls the police. They run to the car and take off in a hurry. But Michelle isn't planning to give up that easily. At home, she uploads the photos and videos she has taken of the couple. She posts it on her social media pages. She decides to contact a local news station as well. She needs to warn her neighbors about these scammers before they extort more people's money. Suddenly, things are moving. The news channel appears to be very interested in this sensational story. Thanks to the photos and videos that Michelle sends them, they manage to find the license plate of the car. This turns out to be in the name of a woman. This is just the beginning of the story that turns out to be behind this. After this first news channel, other media also pick up on it. Journalists from TV, radio, and the newspaper contact Michelle for an interview. One of these parties also managed to find the woman's address. She doesn't seem to be homeless at all. What they discover there, no one expected. The story had already gained quite a bit of fame, so there's a good chance that the beggar and her accomplice had decided to move quickly. Things seemed to come to a standstill until something incredible happened. Meanwhile, Michelle's social media posts also received a lot of attention. The number of comments ran into the thousands, and many people around her shared the messages in their network. The reactions did not lie. People were furious. They felt cheated. The success of these social media posts led to a breakthrough. One day, one of the journalists involved receives a call from a young woman named Rebecca. Rebecca had seen the beggar's photos on social media and said she recognized her. She passed on the scammer's location, and the reporter went straight for it. The journalist, named Emily Valdez, wanted to catch her in the act. When Valdez reached the address Rebecca had provided, it turned out to be another mall. She and her cameraman flew through the shopping center in search of the beggar. She saw several women with babies, but she did not find her target yet. When she finally found the woman, Valdez immediately confronted the beggar with the evidence. "Talk yourself out of that. Is this you in this video?" Valdez asked with her microphone in front of the woman's face. She looked expectantly at the beggar. This one looked confused from the video at Valdez. "I don't speak English," she managed to say. The baby started to cry. The beggar turned and tried quickly to escape attention. When they looked at the footage back at the office, they discovered something very special. The mystery man had yelled at the woman in a language that Valdez and her cameraman did not recognize. This was recorded word for word, but unfortunately they couldn't melt it into chocolate. Still, they were willing to do whatever it takes to find out what language this was. Valdez went looking for a translator, and a good thing because the man's words later turned out to reveal the truth. Leslie Albright, a retired detective, came across Valdez's call and didn't know how quickly to pick up the phone. After 25 years as a detective, Leslie was a specialist in this type of investigation. Leslie was sure he'd heard the language before. He realized that the woman was no ordinary beggar, and that this story was darker than they had ever imagined. Leslie had devoted his career to catching criminals. Over the years, he had seen many things pass by. The language the mystery man spoke immediately made him think of an unsolved case. When he saw the footage of Valdez, he almost immediately recognized that the man was speaking Romani and that they didn't feel like talking to the press. What else was this couple hiding? Leslie realized that the duo were part of an organized crime ring that had been under scrutiny for years. These criminals had illegally entered the United States and started their scam immediately upon arrival. Members of this group lived in cheap apartments, but drove expensive cars. They were often on the road so they could scam as many people as possible, but there was a reason they had never been caught. What the man yelled to the woman when Valdez was after them. Loosely translated, this turned out to be "leave that kid and run." The child, who later turned out to be an abducted American baby, was found on the side of the road. Fortunately, the little one was okay. The couple was nowhere to be found. They are probably making new victims at a different location right now. If you see the woman, the man in the black Mercedes, watch your wallet.